bringing the power of the writing arts to San Antonians of all ages and backgrounds. And tonight's a perfect example of that. I'm so thrilled to have with us three brilliant poets, each having contributed to American literary life in distinct and impactful ways. This is a true powerhouse lineup of poetic talent that you're going to see tonight, okay? And we're thrilled to have, so much just poetic power in the room tonight at one time. The title of tonight's event, Three Poets Laureate Speak, brings together a U.S. Poet Laureate, a State Poet Laureate, and a City Poet Laureate, and a crucial conversation about the power of poetry in our lives and communities. I'm going to nerd out for a second, everyone, and tell you that the Poet Laureate as an entity and institution goes all the way back to Greece, right? The position of a Poet Laureate as a poet appointed by a government or organization to serve as cultural ambassador and raise awareness of poetry began in Greece, and then the next people to be crowned Poets Laureate after the classical age were Petrarch and Alberto Musacco of Padua, and this was happening everyone like 1300s, okay? But in the US, does anyone know when our Poet Laureateship began? 1937. And then in 1985, Congress, made an act of Congress, and it was officially called, the Poet Laureate of the United States. Before that, it was considered a consultant to the Library of Congress. And Ada Limon, as we know, is our current U.S. Poet Laureate. So just a little nerding out on that. So the poets we have tonight are Natasha Trethewey, who is 2012-2014 U.S. Poet Laureate, Pulitzer Prize winner. We're so excited to have her here. Our State Poet Laureate is the amazing Amanda Johnston. And our City Poet Laureate is the 2020-23 San Antonio Poet Laureate, Andrea Vocab Sanderson. And each of these poets are a testament to the remarkable contributions of Black women poets to contemporary American literature and life, and to the transformative ability of poetry to uplift communities and unlock creative voice. And more than ever, we need the unique gifts of poetry to help us be witnesses to our time, to speak truth to power, and to find creative inroads into truly challenging issues. And then, of course, none of this would be able or possible without our amazing featured moderator tonight, Eris Brown, and I'll be introducing her in just a moment, but she'll be taking over for me and running the show. A little bit about Eris. She is a Houston enthusiast and student of abolition. She ranked #2 in the 2023 Women of the World Poetry Slam and #1 at the 2024 Southern Pride Poetry Slam. And her team has a really great name, Smoke Slam. Okay, this is a great name, everyone. Her poems are published with Button Poetry. If you don't know what Button Poetry is, check it out. West Branch, Obsidian Lit, and elsewhere. She received her MFA from the University of Houston and just finished her tenure as the 2023 to 2025 Houston Poet Laureate. And she was the youngest person to hold that position, correct? Yes. A few quick things. We will have an audience Q&A after the poetry reading and the moderated conversation with our poets. And we will have book signings after that. We have the lovely Trick bookstore here selling the poets' books. And just a few thank yous to key sponsors, without which tonight would not be possible. Thank you, the Russell Roger Fund for the Arts. Thank you, the Elizabeth Huff Coates Foundation, the Mays Family Foundation, our lovely Department of Arts and Culture at the City of San Antonio, and of course the amazing Carver Community Cultural Center. Yeah. We need our foundations for the arts. Okay, we need them more than ever. So thank you. And without further ado, I just wanted to thank the Gemini team and staff. They're the magic behind everything. Thank you, Gemini team. And I'm going to just be a very logical person for 1 second. Please fill out your green surveys at the end of the night. They really help us. So Eris, come on up, and I'll let you take over the Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
I pinned my flowers upside down. I swerved my car off the freeway to snap a blurry picture of the median's blue lines. I beg my friends to get wings at the worst bar in town, because I worship the gathering that goes uninterrupted. If I ever tell you I no longer want to live, don't believe me. I have a lifetime of proof that promises otherwise. Ask my mother. My first breath almost killed me. She said I vacuum sucked the fluids, flooded my barely birthed body with all the mess I've been trying to escape from. My first taste of this life were the things that first kept me alive and it nearly drowned me, but I took another breath anyway. If I say I no longer want to live, tell me to take another breath anyway. In 6th grade, the girls ran the fitness gram pacer test, a running exercise increasing in speed under a bell's chime. I lost track of the race and followed only the music. The last one running, enough pull in my calf, still push in my heel, and it was the first time I ever wanted to be breathless and wasn't. I was afraid of all the springs still coiled in me. Thought it wrong to run to the edges of myself, to reach the bottom of my breath, to know what winged beast I'd become when I broke through my own breaking point, but I'd stopped. I don't know who taught me my own limits, but I spent the years after believing them. Stopped before I told the man I loved I did in fact love him. Stopped before pressing my foot on city council's neck. Stopped before I knew how deep my well goes. Reeled in before I touched water. Remember when I told you I am not to be believed. Too wax-winged, too unreaching. Let me tell it, you think me a dandelion, blown from sharp winds, unwilling to find my way back, but all 172,822,000 of my breaths say otherwise. Say, here I am, begging for my alive back. With a vacuum of my surroundings and coil-sharp step, look at all this life I still have left in me. All star matter in springtime, I call my mother just to ask her if sunrise is still coming. Sometimes I need a reminder from a voice that loves me back. I tell my best friends I love them under the same terrible vibes of the worst bar in town. I take every flower that's ever been given to me and pin them to the wall upside down. I promise my living will outlive even my words. Once again, we are so supremely blessed to be amidst not just Black American legacy, but the American canon here in this room. I'm very, very honored to have these writers, to introduce these writers. I will introduce them in the order that they will come and read, and then we will, of course, have a wonderful conversation. Starting with Andrea Vocab Sanderson. Andrea Vocab Sanderson is a dynamic poet, singer, and spoken word artist from San Antonio, Texas. Known for her powerful performances and lyrical prowess, Sanderson has been a driving force in the local arts community. Shout out driving force. Advocating for the power of words to inspire and heal. She served as Poet Laureate of San Antonio from 2022 to 2023, where she has used her platform to uplift marginalized voices and foster creativity across the city. In 2021, she received an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship for her legacy project, the Echo Project, which was featured on KLRN. Vocab's debut book, She Lives in Music, was published by Flower Song Press in 2020, and her albums are available for streaming on all music platforms. Her second collection of poems, The Seasoned One, is forthcoming from National Chief Press. Her work, which blends poetry with music and activism, do you have it now already?
Yes.
Yes, beautiful. So make sure y'all get that book. It is her work, which blends poetry, music, and activism, resonates deeply with audiences addressing themes of social justice, love, and resilience. Give it up for Andrea Vocab. Next, we will have Amanda Johnston, the 2024 Texas Poet Laureate. Amanda Johnston is an acclaimed poet, educator, and advocate for social justice. She is the author of Another Way to Say Enter from Argus House Press in 2017, and her poetry has been widely recognized for its emotional depth and unflinching exploration of identity, race, and gender. Johnston is the founder of Torch Literary Arts, a nonprofit dedicated to promoting the work of Black women in literature. Shout out Black women in literature. Torch Literary Arts is holding it down. Named one of Blavity's 13 Black poets you should know, Amanda's work has been featured on Bill Moyer's The Poetry Society of America series, In Their Own Words, the Mock Radio Hour, and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series. Her work has also appeared in numerous online and print publications, among them Callaloo, Poetry Magazine, Puerto del Sol, The Rumpus, and the anthologies Furious Flower, Sending the Future of African American Poetry and Women of Resistance, Poems for a New Feminism. With a passion for empowering others, she has taught creative writing in various settings, is a former fellow and board president of Cave Canon. Johnston's work continues to influence and inspire new and established voices in the literary world. Give it up for Amanda. And lastly, but most certainly not least, we have Natasha Trethewey. Shout out Natasha Trethewey. She is a Pulitzer Prize winning poet and former U.S. Poet Laureate from 2012 to 2014, who is celebrated for her profound exploration of history, memory, and identity. Born in Gulfport, Mississippi, Trethewey's work often delves into the complexities of the American South, weaving together personal and collective histories. She is the author of several acclaimed collections, including Native Guard, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 2007. Shout out to the Pulitzer Prize. Having also served as the Poet Laureate of the state of Mississippi from 2012 to 2016, she is the author of New York Times bestseller Memorial Drive, A Daughter's Memoir in 2020, and a book of nonfiction, Beyond Katrina, a meditation on the Mississippi Gulf Coast in 2010. Trethewey's lyrical and evocative poetry has earned her numerous accolades and a reputation as one of the most important voices in contemporary American literature. Her writing offers a powerful meditation on the intersection of race, trauma, and resilience. Y'all, celebrate with me these three amazing poets.
For those who raised their hand and said that this was their first time coming to the Carter, welcome to my home. I'm so happy you joined us, and as my boss, the executive director, Cassandra, said, please don't make it your last time. Come back time and time again. Bienvenidos, you are welcome. All right, time for the poetry.
Come on.
What a moment to be amongst you, beautiful women. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra, for making. I remember our first conversation about doing this. I was so lit. I was like, what? I'm gonna cry, and I'm just gonna tell you, I'm not apologizing for it. So when the tears start flowing, just go with it. I'm gonna do this piece. It is called 4-Wheel Drive. It is she lives in music, but it's also on my album, She Tastes Like Music, and it sounds a little different because it's a whole hip-hop song with other people featuring in all of that. And I'm singing poets, so just, I'm sorry, it's what I do. Key in the ignition, put it in a drive. I know you'll be right there when I arrive. Something about this music keeps me alive. You are the muse like the fuse for the scribe. Whenever I'm zoning, I can keep flowing. I can keep going. Moon aglow, halo, cloud covered lover. You like the pathway, lead me to discover another melody, midnight summer breeze. I escape darkness into your delicate reach. Each time I ponder, let my thoughts saunter, encounter me at every intersection like Cosmic GPS, the way you encompass my direction. No more wandering, you pinpoint me to self-expression. On the expressway, I'm a blazing meteorite en route to a session. Whiz by, a speeding zephyr, spit something clever. Tickle the ear like feathers, cadence to the measure. Tethered to my tongue, I feel it on the 1, release it on the 2. By the 3, I'm elevated, interstellar rear view. Started out on the interstate and ended on the moon. Key in the ignition, put it in the drive. I know you'll be right there when I arrive. Something about this music keeps me alive. You are the muse like a fuse for the sky. Whenever I'm zoning, I can keep flowing. I can keep going. Gaze into the lens as the volume ascends. We can attend the horizon as the orchestra of nature begins. Rend the silence from the firmament and climb the scale as beauty prevails. Notes trail ride the tail of a comet. Cosmic rays chase the shade away. A ballet of light arabesques across the darkness. The artist digests the visage, recants the display. The artist digests the visage and recants the display. And you could say that the masterpiece speaks to the reality around. And you hear the majesty peak from the speakers and bleed sound. When the world goes down to slumber is when my mind starts to begin and design the wonder. Sample the musical flavors. And if you are what you eat, I'm such a tasty creator. I say, if you are what you eat, I'm such a tasty creator. Innovator, originator, smooth operator, stage to the paper. Ink drips treasured thoughts from my lips. 4 beats to the measure, 4 wheels to the right. My soul applies pressure, 4-wheel drive. 4-1 to resolve it, 4-1 to arrive. Imperfectly evolved, 4-wheel drive. We about to take off. That's how it is. I don't know what that means to you, but I know what it means for me. Sometimes certain pieces we write make us feel like our art is valid. And so that's what I'm indulging in tonight. I have been extremely transparent in saying that in this season, I am not hiding my sadness, my fears, my concerns. I'm very concerned. And I'm sure everyone else, and I'm not saying you aren't, I'm just saying I'm very concerned. And it has made it very difficult to focus on my art because of my depth of concern. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that same way. You sit at your desk or you're standing in your position of whatever it is that you do for your occupation, or being a parent, or being a grandparent, whatever your titles are, and as you're trying to operate in that title and be that, you thinking about all this mess that's happening right now, because it's a mess. All right, so yeah, that's what I'm just being honest about. That's how I'm feeling. I'm mourning daily about certain things that are happening, but I'm also fighting. I'm fighting, and you should too, and we should ally and fight together. This poem is called the Library Poem, and how fitting to do this poem here. Seek shelter in the binding, finding an oasis, action, adventures, fiction and non-fictional fantasy awaits thee. Beauty in the eye of the beholder holding a book. Can you be taken from the terrace of your thoughts, captured in a reality all your own, unlocked by an author's hand? Those who've never read the story simply will not understand the plot lines unfolding in your intrepid palms. The shelves breathe life into endless possibilities. The stacks keep track of history achieved. Believe and make believe transfer from imagination to creation, flying above head after crawling up from dank dungeons with talons and claws. Clues that creep out of the mist under a sleuth's discovery. Romance, shout out to Laura, that intensifies over the course of an arousing summer heat. A letter penned by a delicate quill in the equinox and preserved. A horrific tale recanted from a jail cell that haunts without decaying. A replaying of a theater drama worthy of cinematic reels. An atlas of destinations that appeal to world-traveling minds. A collection of photographic portraits of design. An attic flung open holding an anthology of masters. An unearthed archive of basement encyclopedias foretells of crafters. Hungry readers seek after plentiful pleasure and knowledge, to have the irises satisfied with a buffet of delectable words in a sumptuous situation. The library encapsulates the plenitude of endless destinations. An institution of wonders, unrestricted, where there are volumes tucked in silence being gifted to the masses. The classes become commoners and paupers become pompous. The overcast shines clearly and the foreshadowing follows the seeking eyes. A series of novels whisper clamoring colors in silent surprise. Truth defies gravity, lifting limitless into small spaces. The centuries meet each other door to door in the corridors of human gaze. Pupils glazed with excitement and enchanted by spell-binding words. Meet me at the checkout counter while scanning book covers for interesting blurbs. See you at the library. That one is not published yet, but it, if you really liked it, I could email it to you, I guess. I'm gonna read you one more poem to get out of the way because there are two other brilliant women that need to come up here and just sprinkle you with their goodness. Sprinkles. She commissioned me to write a poem called Rest, and I'm gonna read Rest, because some of y'all need to take y'all's cats to sleep. Sorry, you're up worrying. I'm talking to myself. Because I'll be up worried. I'm like, what is this fool doing?
Yeah.
Jesus, he's taking away all the money for all the arts.
Yeah.
I can't, it's hard to sleep.
Yeah.
It's hard. So I'm just reminding you to go your butt to bed. Rest. Repose for the soul sounds like silence in the garden. Being planted in serenity, allowing for reflection and growth. Looks like transit to fertile terrains, remaining in the presence of nutrients and nurturing hands. Gaining ground as we get back up on our feet again. We aren't pushing these petals to bloom too soon. We are experiencing the process, digressing and believing the manifestation will happen in tune with God's timing. Until then, I'm aligning myself with peace and living unstressed. For the burden of being overworked does not mean I am blessed with opportunity. Having ourselves overwhelmed by circumstance is not a gift. We can cultivate our soil better after we've rested in our skin. Sometimes we need to marinate on the mantras. Meditate on where we've been as well as where we're going. Yes, doing all of this from the perspective of a dream state. Spirit can speak clearly in your dreams. Wait on the sign before we get caught up in the streams of toil. Staying up late, burning the midnight oil is frying our focus and blocking our spiritual hearing. When we slumber unencumbered, we will wake up with the freedom to move renewed in our strength. When we slumber unencumbered, we will wake up with the freedom to move renewed in our strength. Rest in the garden will renew your strength. Rest in the garden will renew your life. Take a retreat from the chores. Delegate the duty, girl. Sleep on a decision. Catch up on your beauty rest on a constant basis. Better yet, set up a cycle for optimal functioning. Talking to myself. Say a prayer when you wake up worrying. Get you some sleep. Lay down and rest. The best parts of us are exhausted sometimes. Close your eyes. Take a nap. And in the rest, you will find that your mind absolutely needed the break to crack open the window seals of your vision. Our intuition is working just fine, but we can't listen if our mind is bogged down. Sometimes we need to get out of town or take a staycation, sit down for a spell, and the strategy for a new creation will come when the whole being is refreshed. How can her story write itself without perpetual rest? How can you walk in your power and glory and remain limitless without rest? Let us relinquish ourselves from all of this busyness and prioritize the business of getting some rest, because rest in the garden will renew your strength. Rest in the garden will renew your life. And now, State Poet Laureate Amanda Johnston.
Oh my gosh. Please, another round of applause for Andrea. That was the second time. My word. Thank you so much to the little carver, to Gemini Ink, to Alexandra, and everyone who made this possible tonight. Round of applause for them. This work is not easy. This is not light work. This is serious and necessary work. This is work that reflects all of us through our art and our creativity. This is work that feeds our humanity, our souls. Thank you for doing that work. And thank you all for showing up to be a part of this work. We can't do this without you, right? Round of applause for all of you who are coming. I understand Fiesta is happening. So there are a lot of places you could be, I'm sure. But you are here with us. And that matters. Writers need readers. We need each other to build the community that we want to see and be in the world. So thank you for getting up, coming out, and making this incredible space of togetherness and poetry possible. I'm going to jump around and read a couple poems. I'm going to start with prayer and end with praise.
Amen.
And everything in this here, the Prince said, this thing called life that happens in between. The joy and pain of it all feeds the poetry. Jesus be a prayer. Jesus be a fence. Jesus be a moat. Jesus be a back door. Jesus be a friend. Jesus be a payday. Jesus be a hookup. Jesus be a minute. Jesus be a minute. Jesus be a credit. Jesus be a discount. Jesus be a lover. Jesus be a kiss. Jesus be a nap. Jesus be a car. Jesus be a dance. Jesus be a drink. Jesus be a jam. Jesus be a no. Jesus be an exit. Jesus be a home. Jesus be a Monday. Jesus be a Friday. Jesus be a vacay. Jesus be a today. Jesus be a stillness. Jesus be a coffee. Jesus be a stillness. Jesus be a minute. Jesus be a minute. Jesus be a miracle. Jesus be a minute.
do believe, Nina Simone said, the art reflects the times, right? So I don't shy away from any subject when it appears to me, even in traffic, in odd, strange ways. This poem is called No Good Deed Goes Unpunished. I see the white man driving next to me and consider every scenario of this moment as we approach a red light and what's at risk if I lower my window, expose my daughter and myself to the unknown repercussions of kindness. I calculate the risk involved to tell him his gas cap is open. His face, a concoction of morning traffic and time, ignores my initial honk and gesture toward his tank. My daughter asks, is it safe? And I assure her I'll smile, be soft, do all the right things that in no way guarantee will survive this human interaction should he see danger, a threat in my concerned black woman face. I honk again. I refuse to live in a world where we're too afraid to do what's right. The man turns toward our car, aware now of our existence, and the immediate future rests in his lamp of what's beyond my understanding. He nods and drives off, gas cap dangling. My daughter corrects me, no, Mama, the gas, is it safe? And I'm lost in meaning. What is safe in this burning for survival?
Come on.
Read this poem. My dear sweet husband and I just celebrated 25 years.
Yes.
So I want to read this poem for him, for Fabian, and also for love, no matter where it finds you, no matter where it was born, how it got to you, is what matters most. Time for onions. And this poem plays with the word time, so it's time like the herb and time like time. Onions have left fetal tears beneath French-tipped fingernails, along with green brother pepper and sweet sister Aki, mixing in a lazy yellow river down a new white spicy palm. This is not his mama's recipe. No instructions came for planting little boys in a hill of rice and peas to cultivate men of clay and salt, water-willing kidney beans to split, ready to receive the time, make the time, to fold new love with old in this foreign woman's pepper pot, placed at a young bride's bland feet, quickly stirring, slowly contemplating, seasons changing, and the feeling of kneading dough, needing to mold fresh offerings for a displaced heart, still hungry for Kingston. Around the world for love. I'm so glad that we found each other here in Texas. This next poem is after a poem by Yusuf Komunyakaa, a famous poem by Yusuf Komunyakaa titled Facing It. And this is my poem that considers, that poem was speaking to his experience as a Vietnam veteran and his experience going to the Vietnam War Memorial in DC. And so facing it, the memorial, facing it, the war, and his time there. My poem that is inspired by his is titled Facing Us, and it's looking at us here in the world, in the war that is taking place right here at home, that we don't call it that, but it is happening nonetheless. So that us is doing double work in facing us, and it's capitalized US. My black face fades, hiding inside black smoke. I knew they'd use it, damn it, tear gas. I'm grown, I'm fresh. Their clouded assumption eyes me like a runaway, guilty as night chasing morning. I run this way, the street lets me go. I turn that way, I'm inside the back of a police van again, depending on my attitude to be the difference. I run down the signs, half expecting to find my name protesting in ink. I touch the name Freddie Gray. I see the beat cop's worn eyes, names stretch across the people's banner, but when they walk away, the names fall from our lips. Paparazzi flash, call it riot. The ground, a body on the ground. A white cop's image hovers over us. Then his blank gaze looks through mine. I'm a broken window. He's raised his right arm, a gun in his hand. In the black smoke, a drone tracking targets. No, a crow gasping for air. You know, again, my work, I feel it's my duty as an artist, as a poet, to be true to the artistic impulse that comes to me and get the work down no matter what it is that comes. But I wanted to do something intentional during my time as Texas Poet Laureate, and my statewide project is called Praise Song for the People. I wanted to do something that celebrated the incredible poets across this state, who could anyone be Texas Poet Laureate, amplify their work, but also amplify the amazing communities that we live in, and with the incredible people who make where we live amazing, and why we choose to make this place home. I think about the world, and there are people who are fleeing some beautifully stunning places in the world, and it's because the people there have made it unlivable, right? So I wanted to praise the people, the poets and the people of this incredible state who make it a wonderful place by the everyday, large and small actions that we do. So you can check out that project online at praisesongforthepeople.com. These wonderful poets are also part of the project. Alexandra has a poem coming soon. Eris is part of the program. Vocab is, and other incredible poets across the state. And it's free for you to check out. But I invited myself to write a poem every day that we had a reading, on the day of the praise song reading, to keep myself focused on the little moments that happen every day in my life that are deserving of praise, and the people who are making those moments happen and possible. So I want to end with these, let's see, it's 4 poems, they're short, but they're in praise of the incredible people and praise of people like you. I know you are making someone's day today. You are making my night being here. Praise song for St. Andrea, Taco Bell, November 29, 2024. You don't see the clouds I carry, the storm of the day, difficult weather beating upside my head from a place I can't name but need shelter from when I go to the nearest place that will take my money and let me sit alone in a booth in the corner of nowhere.
Come on.
And there you were, St. Andrea, reading my face like stars. I look up and your smile of gold caps on each tooth lights up my world. You okay? You say, and I say nothing. Don't have to. The help my heart would have called for came right on time with you.
Come on.
Bat crossing. You know, Austin has the largest bat colony in North America, I believe, or at least in the United States, yes. And so every year they fly, it's millions of bats under the Congress Street Bridge, and then they make their trips out to eat in the evening, and then go to Mexico, and then come back. A lot of people come see the bats. Just want to clarify that when I mentioned 10 million bats, it's real. Bat crossing. 10 million bats, 20 million little wings flutter out from under the Congress Street Bridge in the blue-pink ombre of dust. The photo in the Austin airport captured the moment so perfectly, I had to take a pic. In the frantic airport traffic, millions of little feet about to soar, I stop and fumble with my phone, apps, angles, my tiny desire to witness. The man sees me, stops and waits. A flock of people move around us. he waits, and for a few seconds, we hover on a tiny cloud of kindness. I get the shot, and we float on. Praise the little moments of seeing. Praise the pause and patience we share in the pixelated moments of life. Quick anecdote about that. So you heard the poem. I was flying. I was getting on a plane. And this moment of kindness happens. I got the photo and looked at him and I said, thank you, you're kind. Guess who was sitting next to me on the plane? Elbow to elbow on the plane, right? Assigned seats. I picked my seat. So he picked his too. And there we were. And I thought, what if that was a negative experience? What if he was, hurried with me and frustrated? And what if then I turned to him and, and was angry that he was frustrated with me? Then we sat on a plane, elbow to elbow. It happened again then on my return flight. There was a couple sitting behind me, and we were getting off of the plane, and people, scurrying about, trying to get off the plane first. And it was a moment just of awkwardness, but we allowed grace for each other. Go ahead, you pass, no, you pass. And we all got off the plane. I was going to a Houston Texans game, 70,000 people in the stadium. Guess who was sitting right behind me? That couple. And it's as if God was looking down saying, if you didn't see, I'm trying to prove a point here. We're all very close, much closer than we realize.
Come on.
Choose kindness. The choice is always kindness. Roadside attraction. On I-35, you're bound to see it. A car on the side of the road, a flat tire, smoking engine, some major inconvenience on the way forward through time and space. Rubberneckers gawk, mumble, poor thing, and keep on keeping on. But more often than not, a car or truck pulls up behind the one in need, and someone crawls out with a concerned brow and helping hands. The tire is changed. The tow truck is called. A gas can magically appears, and all is moving again. More often than not, we say yes when asked, do you need some help? More often than not, we see each other without judgment, questions, dividing lines. We cross the median and lean to the shoulder. Praise those who come when called. Praise those who come heart first. My last poem, thank you so much again for having me. It is an honor to be here amongst you incredible poets. I am your forever fan, and it is a pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you in San Antonio. Thank you so much for coming out and making this possible. This poem is dedicated to the incredible women of Torch Literary Arts, the Black women writers from around the world who bravely share their stories, no matter what comes. They share and they tell you they were here so that we can witness and celebrate the work. Praise them. We carry the torch. Listen, a spark, a low whisper growing in the filament of the mind. This is how the future begins. Can you hear it? A low murmur rises to give way to impulse, and the wheels of creation are called to spin. Can you feel it? How we, earthbound miracles, paint pictures with words, start fire with a flick of our tongues, a blaze burning from our beating hearts. Can you see it? The light we carry across the page, across the world, a future that greets us with each bright new day when we dare to carry the torch within. Thank you.
Good evening, y'all. I am really so honored to be here with you and these remarkable women in this space of incredible poems. And thank you, Alexandra and Gemini Ink, for inviting me. Across my career, I've been most interested in the way the facts of history are often buried, hidden, erased, or sanitized. And we are living in a moment that I would say was unprecedented if I didn't know that this always happened. I'm sure many of you know about the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, wherein a violent white mob descended upon a wealthy black enclave, Greenwood, home of Black Wall Street, and destroyed it, killing many of its citizens and leaving thousands more homeless, destitute, and dispossessed of the generational wealth they would have had to pass down. What began as an accusation, an allegation that turned out to be false, led to the massacre. The white mob began to gather, intent on a lynching. I was asked at the 100th anniversary to write a poem about the Tulsa Race Massacre. And I want to make sure that all of you know that at the moment that I went there to write the poem, I went to the dig where they were excavating one of the mass graves. And they have since been able to identify through DNA one of the victims in that mass grave, who was a black soldier, a veteran who had just come home from World War I. He was on his way home to Georgia, where his family was. The last letter they received from him, which is in the National Archives, we hope still, said that he was on his way to Tulsa. This is called Ground Truth, Notes for a Poem on the Tulsa Race Massacre. The first day I spent in Tulsa, I woke to a parade gathering outside my window. A commemoration begun in 1918 as Armistice Day, marking the end of the Great War. At the corner of Elgin and Archer, I was just blocks from the place I'd come to see, the heart of it, Black Wall Street, yet another site steeped in the residue of history, of white mob violence settled down in the soil. Watching the staging area, the flatbed trucks lining the route, I couldn't stop seeing scenes of the invasion, massacre in Greenwood, the dead hauled away, black men paraded through the streets, women and children rounded up for internment, carted through town, through the jeering cheers of whites. Some of them, survivors were called boys, young as 10 years old. Call it coincidence or synchronicity, the term Carl Jung gave to the phenomenon of events coinciding as if related but with no causal connection. The morning of the parade, I wasn't thinking of armistice, nor that you could trace the events of 1921 back to the war, to black soldiers come back determined to end Jim Crow, to fight for democracy at home. I was thinking only of how many times I'd heard a similar story, the same equation, whites incited to violence by an accusation, false or not, a through line across time and space, as far north as Duluth, Minnesota, 1920, where a white mob abducted 3 black men from jail and hanged them from a lamppost. South to my home state, Mississippi, 1955, the seed barn where 2 white men tortured Emmett Till, a black child, for whistling at a white woman. The bridge over the Tallahatchie where they tied him with barbed wire to a fan, a bullet in his head, and dumped his body in the river. Days later, a revelation. Snag in the water where he would not be held down. His body come back, a single toe rising above the surface as if to signal, I am here. You will not erase me, my body of evidence. Some say coincidence is pattern revealed. Decades before Till would become another item in our national ledger, citizens of Greenwood were reading the papers, watching the patterns emerge. White mob violence, lynching, and Negro drives. Blacks run out of town, their homes looted and burned. In Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898, Springfield, Illinois, 1908, Forsyth County, Georgia, 1912, East St. Louis, 1917, Chicago, 1919, Edom. They were watching patterns of rhetoric, language, evidence of thought, as in Nab Negro, the headline in the Tulsa Tribune that day in May. How not to read in it the syntax of the imperative, as in a thing still to be done, a call to action. One witness swore he saw the words lynched Negro that day in the paper, where there was only nab Negro and a poem, Do It Now, about swatting flies. We must show no ruth or pity to the fly. In the country or the city, he must die. From this distance, I can still see the connections, the inference, like the rhyme I heard a white boy chant when we were children in school. Niggers and flies I do despise. Nab Negro, do it now. In Tulsa, on Veterans Day, a retired Army officer was talking unity, saying brothers and sisters, saying those who served can come together, show support, share commonalities, love each other. But I don't know. After January 6th, it's hard to believe those words. It took 120 years for Congress to pass an anti-lynching law named for Emmett Till. The year before he was murdered, Eisenhower changed Armistice Day to Veterans Day, a way to include more veterans, more wars. But I can't help thinking in metaphor, how it replaced a word that meant suspension of fighting, hostile behavior. That was 1954, the same year as the Brown decision, ending segregation, advancing civil rights, the kind of change in America that has always led to rage, recalcitrance. To send a message, new monuments to white supremacy went up around the country. A bronze Robert E. Lee in Montgomery, Alabama, a Robert E. Lee Elementary in Washington State, the Confederate battle flag raised again on the flagpole in Georgia, statues mustered as far north as Maine, as far west as Oregon. Continuity, too, is pattern. In Tulsa, there were nearly as many people at the parade as the mob that descended on Greenwood, and I can't help imagining the possibility of that much remembering, reckoning, armistice. Watching the news, I wondered how many of them, so close to the massacre, the ground on which they paraded, remembered it, or recalled the service of black soldiers in World War I, how one black unit, the 369th, spent more time at the front, suffered more casualties than any other American troops, how some black soldiers returned and were lynched in uniform, sometimes by white brothers because they were in uniform. Even now, they get lost in our national memory, the gaps and erasures, a whites-only version of a segregated war. Think of it, 1921. Those black veterans in uniform marching to the courthouse to prevent a lynching, uphold the rule of law, and the white mob they faced. I keep thinking how much it would matter if this history were part of our American curriculum, if every child learned it in school, all of it, despite feeling shame for the actions of people in the past, a feeling akin to empathy. A generous thought, my father always said, is the idea of justice taking root, a kind of redress, which is why I go back to one postcard of the burning, how the photographer must have shot from high above, a God's eye view, words forming in his mind as if he'd been deputized to write the scripture of this scene, a long road upon which a few people have gathered, perhaps to take a last look, smoke darkening the distant sky, and above them, in white, the words, ruining the Negro out of Tulsa. Coincidence is misspelling, heavy with meaning for someone like me who can't help seeking it everywhere, a way to make order out of the chaos of this world. Ruining, word for making a song of lamentation, a poem of mourning, which is what this is. What I'm trying to say is that to understand America, I spent the day in Tulsa thinking about democracy, standing on Greenwood, sifting through the archives and watching from a distance the slow unearthing of history settle down in the soil. Exhumation of the long buried in a mass grave at Oak Lawn, evidence of the nearly erased rising now to the surface like a reckoning, a toehold on the truth.
would love to ask these three lovely poets to come back to the stage. Can we give all of these poets a round of applause? I'm in awe of their brilliance. Thank you all so much for your work. Thank you so much for your writing. Thank you so much for your labor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and I want to start off just with, we have this lovely title of three poets laureates speak, and I wanted to just settle the stage with, if you could speak to a little bit of your experience as poet laureate, what your goals were, what you hope to contribute, just to start us off, and we can go in order.
Okay, so y'all looking at me like I want to respect y'all. I shouldn't be the first to speak on anything. I feel, man, it's such a, I'm still tripping because this is such an honor, but I gotta get over it because I gotta talk. All right, so I was announced as San Antonio Poet Laureate at the very beginning of the pandemic. And so some of the amazing things that Poets Laureate get to have, their investiture service with the mayor, they lay the medallion and do other things. I was showing up to empty rooms with just a camera person with a mask on and, you know, being told to do things. A lot of things I did was like responses and alert the community, like write a song about COVID safety and the protocols that keep changing every 2 weeks because no one knows how the hell you get COVID and how the hell you get rid of it. So and it allowed me to be a voice for people and there were times that it felt very uncomfortable. But my first year alone, I was wrecking shop because I was like, I cannot stop, because if I stop, it's going to get real depressing and ugly around here. And I'm used to keeping myself busy to combat the fear and the pain and the hurt and stuff. I'm to a place now where I ain't doing that anymore. But in those moments, I was just like, keep working, keep working. People need you. You need to do this. And it was always tethered to my spiritual walk and praying and asking what ways can I support community, and it showed up in a lot of different ways, and I'm grateful for every single moment of it.
I talked a little bit about my project, Pray Song for the People, right? But in planning that, you know, not knowing what was going to happen in November of 2024, not knowing what was going to happen tomorrow, you know, I knew that as Texas Poet Laureate and as the first Black woman to be Texas Poet Laureate, I wanted to make sure that I was amplifying our diverse and intersectional community. So Praise Song for the People is specifically that. It says we're the people, and the people are all of us. Not excluding anyone because you didn't come here, you weren't born here. In Texas, they really get territorial. Are you native or not? Right? And it's like, well, I was born in East St. Louis, and I came to Texas when I was a baby. So if I'm not a Texan, then what am I? You know. But including our queer community, our intergenerational community, our immigrant community. This is still where we live. This is our home. And I wanted that reflected in the poets who were writing the poems and sharing their work as part of the project, and the people they were celebrating. And so those were my two must-haves, is that it's diverse and inclusive, and that if I do anything, it brings more people into the conversation, into community through poetry. Poetry is for the people. If people are not there in your poetry, I don't know that is poetry, but how I define it.
So I don't think many people are sitting around thinking about the project that they're going to take on prior to being named U.S. Poet Laureate, because you're not sitting around ever expecting the call that you're going to be U.S. Poet Laureate. But the moment you are named U.S. Poet Laureate, all the journalists want to know what your project is.
Yeah.
And so I just started answering early on because I was still at that moment also the State Poet Laureate of Mississippi. So I just started saying that I wanted to find out what the people wanted and needed of poetry. I mean, the U.S. Poet Laureate is supposed to be a lightning rod for poetry in America. But I wanted to know what the people thought. And so I had this idea to harken back to something that Gwendolyn Brooks did. And Gwendolyn Brooks was the last consultant in poetry before the Act of Congress changed it to the United States Poet Laureate Consultant to the Library of Congress, that long title. She apparently met with people, answered every letter that she got from school children. So I decided to move to Washington and hold office hours in the Library of Congress so that I could actually meet with people who would come to tell me what they needed of poetry. And what I found is that even as every few decades someone will publish an article about the death of poetry in America and how nobody cares about poetry, that it wasn't true. That poetry still occupied an important place in people's lives, whether they were writers of it or readers of it or people who attended slams or in book clubs, whatever. Poetry still mattered to people. And so in my second term, my signature project was a series of reports on PBS's NewsHour called Where Poetry Lives. And what I wanted to do was show the way that people across America were making use of poetry in their everyday lives. And so one episode, for example, featured a poet in New York City at the Brooklyn Memory Center who was using poetry to help Alzheimer's patients live in the moment. Another was Rafael Campo, a poet and doctor at Harvard Medical School, who was teaching poetry to interns because he believed that was the way to help them learn to treat the whole patient. Another was the Inside Out Literary Arts Program in Detroit, where Terry Blackhawk was working and showing how poetry in the schools was actually helping children articulate their lives and, believe it or not, raise test scores. They did better when they wrote poetry. Another was out in Seattle at the juvenile detention. Tutors there were helping the kids who were incarcerated write poems. It was both an act of therapy, but an act of voicing their own story so that when they got out, they were the ones in control of the narrative and not the prison or the juvenile detention center.
Thank you so much for those answers. One of the things I'm curious about, and this was one of the things that when I became Poet Laureate, I immediately felt the tension because being a Poet Laureate and a state-appointed Poet Laureate, your work is viewed through the lens of the state. And I'm curious about the ways in which you either embraced or refused that sort of lens and how that has impacted your work, either while you were during your tenure or your work after. Does that make sense? Beautiful. And we can start with Natasha.
So I think different from some of the state-appointed laureates, the U.S. Poet Laureate is actually not expected to, as one former laureate said, write poems celebrating government or the president's dog or whatever. And so no one was asking me to write commemorative poems. The one thing that I will say about that position, though, is that before it was announced, I had to go to Washington to meet with and sort of be briefed on what might come up in my tenure, because my predecessor, the late Phil Levine, who in his 80s said whatever he wanted to say. I mean, he's been doing that his whole career as a poet, and it was often very political. And apparently, in an interview, he had said that Congress was a den of vipers. And the Library of Congress wanted to talk to me about that because, of course, the Poet Laureate of the United States is appointed by Congress, by the act of Congress, and appointed by the librarian of Congress. So you don't want to make Congress mad. But of course, they also know that they should not and cannot tell poets what to do. So what they told me was that I could say anything I wanted to, as long as I said it in the context of a poem.
Well, I have to say, I didn't really know the ins and outs of what was expected of a laureate until we become a laureate. But here in Texas, similarly, there's not an expectation or a requirement where some, like city poets might have, you have to do this many events and you have to, whatnot. So there was no expectation of having to produce anything specifically, but likewise, those reporters and people will come and, I have a clear mind that it's like, I know when you're looking for a headline, you're looking for, something to be, a lightning rod, to get clickbait for your, online publication or whatever it is. And I didn't want to risk us having this for even saying what might have been on my heart, but I knew could be a flashpoint, right? So I was very mindful about that, but without having an expectation, I also knew I wasn't going to do nothing. I want to use the opportunity to amplify poets and people through the laureateship. So if you go and read the work, you get through the poems, right? Giving space for people to share what they want to share, which it should be, freedom of speech. Have you heard about it? It's a great thing. I highly recommend and think we should keep it. But in freedom of expression. So if you go to praisesongforthepeople.com, you will see so many different experiences, so many different voices, so many different themes and subject matter all expressed through those poems. And I'm grateful that I was able to then create a space and a platform to do that for more people as Poet Laureate.
Given the season that I became Poet Laureate, being the fact that I knew that I was first African American Poet Laureate, my thought process was I represent all my peoples at all times. And so I was extremely mindful about the things that I said. And it wasn't hard for me because I came from a Christian rap background. Like writing Christian rap lyrics, you got a book. You write for what's in that book. That's your that's kind of your, So since that was my compass, it's still my compass. The Bible's still my compass when I think about poetry. And I was always mindful, and it paid off for me because then one day I started getting phone calls that one of my poems ended up in the STAR test, and I was like, that's cool. And but it's just, I always think about the fact that anybody at any age group, anywhere in their life could come across one of my poems, and they don't have access to me per se to ask me what I meant when I said what I said. And so write clearly, be very clear, and know that they're impressionable minds that read our words and use your power wisely. And so I always kept that in mind. Yeah.
I love that. And one of the things I think about is, like, even aside from our laureateship, we are deeply rooted in geographies, and even in Houston specifically, that is a multitude of neighborhoods and communities and people that are in Houston. And so I'm curious about when you think about where you are from and how that impacts your work, and the ways in which you not necessarily have to represent, but the ways in which it is a part of you. Can you talk about and speak to some sort of intricacies of geography in your own work?
the largeness and the grandeur of Texas, geographically speaking, I wanted to make sure that the project touched across Texas. That it wasn't just something that lived online, but it lived in real time in those communities. So during my time as Poet Laureate and doing the Praise Song project, yes, the poems have been published online on the website, but we have been curating readings with support also from the Writers League of Texas across the state. So I've had the incredible honor to go to McAllen, which, if you've never been, is 15 minutes from the border, right? And so that's a specific group of poets and people and community that came out to those readings. I went up to Canyon, up in the Panhandle, and again, very specific, just being there. It's my first time ever going to the Panhandle. Again, Texas is big. You might not see everything, you live here 100 years. But to get out and just see how flat it was, and to see people so excited to share the canyon with me. I had no idea that the second largest canyon in the country is in Canyon, Texas. Only second to the Grand Canyon. I had no idea, but people proud of the place and the geography where they come from. And so, of course, in Austin and here in San Antonio, have a reading in Houston and went up to Dallas. So the area and region itself is what is shaping and feeding and nurturing the poets and the community, and that came through in the work in different ways, which is beautiful. But physically being there and experiencing it was beautiful.
So, being a Black girl in San Antonio, which is like 60% Latina, Hispanic, Mexican American, all of that, I feel mostly invited in to celebrate other people's heritage, other people's, and trying to be mindful of that, knowing where I live, knowing that I must honor Yanawana, must honor Aslan, must honor the roots of this city that is connected to bloody wars. And that are celebrated and heralded like it was a great moment. And when people walking up on the Alamo, like, this is the Alamo? Yes. It's like a little bigger, it's like the size of a house. But it's on this pedestal, and being mindful and thinking about that in the works that I write. I'm always being commissioned to write poems, so it's not so hard because there's research that goes into it, and the people that ask me to write poems, it's usually a lot of feminist empowerment groups and things of that nature. So I'm proud of the people that ask me to. That means my work is speaking that revolutionaries want me to pen something for them, or even corporations and groups want me. And so that goes with the mindfulness of what do they represent and what am I speaking to. I think it always will show up. I think my identity, I didn't realize how much my identity showed up in my work. And then when I was able to release She Lives in Music and stuff, and it's like, oh, every poem is about music. That's because I'm living in that little world. That's my bubble, So, but I realize what's happening in the world, but a lot of my lens or perspective comes from music because there's a jukebox going on in here at all times.
So I was born on Confederate Memorial Day, April 26, 1966. Exactly 100 years to the day that the state of Mississippi first celebrated a holiday glorifying the lost cause, white supremacy, the attempt to destroy the Union in order to maintain it, and slavery. And my parents' interracial marriage was illegal in 1966 in Mississippi, and as many as 20 other states in the nation. In some ways, I think there's no way I could have not become a poet. And become the kind of poet that I am. The poet Elizabeth Sewell, in a poem that she wrote not long after Kennedy's inauguration, her poem was called "They Were the Land's Before the Land Was Theirs." It is a play on Robert Frost's poem, "The Gift Outright." Her poem is about Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, the three civil rights workers who were murdered in Mississippi. And in it, she has the line, "We are all Mississippians." She's sort of echoing something that Malcolm X said, that anything south of the Canadian border is Mississippi. Mississippi is a crucible for all of the things in this country that we have been dealing with and are dealing with even more. And so that geography for me is both a literal place, but it is a figurative place that inspires my work as a poet, even now, ongoing. It's a place that keeps on giving.
And I wanna get into because that sort of truth is something that I noticed that many Black women writers honor in their work, like that, not shying away from that.
You're on the
truth.
mic.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me? Not shying away from that truth, not shying away from that genuine, grotesque honesty in history. And so I want to ask y'all a little bit of a juicy, problematic question. As we're thinking about being a Black woman writer and knowing the history and the legacy of our words and African American literature, I'm curious how much you see your own work as a labor of love or like a labor of necessity.
Both of them. And it comes in the commissions a lot of times. We are asked to be super brave and go out. Sorry. We're asked to go out and speak. I never forget this. It was Good Friday a few years ago. I was speaking at pretty much an all-white church. It was me, and I begged my mama to come for support. The only other Black person in the audience was my mama. That's how scared I was. I was like, "Mama, please come to the show." I was asked to speak on Good Friday, and they asked me to write a poem to draw the parallels between the murder of George Floyd and the crucifixion of Christ. To an all-white audience. And because so many times we go into poetry spots and we preach it to the crowd of African Americans complaining about white supremacy to the Black people. They're not the ones that need to hear it. They're not the ones. And I feel like that was like one of the most brave. I cried through that whole poem. I mean, from when I started, I cried, and I cried through the whole thing. And then a sea of white people lined up to talk to me in the moments of tears and the apologies, and what I said in some of those moments where I know you feel guilt, I know you feel shame, but what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Because I'm here. We in this moment together, and we can walk from this moment holding each other accountable and, to do something. When I won the Literary Excellence Award last year with Gemini Ink, I got up there and I addressed the whole room. I said, "What we gonna do?" And I need y'all to remember this beautiful solidarity. We hugging and crying, and yay, Black Vocab, she did a good thing. When it gets hard come January moving forward, how are we gonna show up for each other? Please keep showing up for me, because I'm gonna keep showing up. Even though they say, Black women, take a break, go sit down. This is not your fight. It ain't, but it is gonna be. It's gotta be, because I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna let them kill me. I'm not gonna let it come to my doorstep. So we have to keep,
Well, as I said earlier, one of the things I've been interested in across my career is about historical erasure. And so I've been trying to write to restore those narratives, those aspects of our shared American history that are buried or forgotten or sanitized. That is a project of memorialization and a project of making monuments, making lyrical monuments, monuments in language that might last longer than some of the monuments we erect in stone, take down, put back up, whatever. Because a poem can live in the mind of readers long after it's been made, and it can be shared in that way too. And that is, even writing about something difficult, the act of monument making and memorialization is an act of joy and hope and resilience. You know, Percy Bysshe Shelley wrote that poems are records of the best and happiest times and the happiest and best minds. And also that poetry is the mirror that makes beautiful that which is distorted. So even when writing about the distorted, buried, forgotten facts of our shared history, the act of making it, the act of, and the made thing is the beautiful thing.
Oh, that's such a beautiful answer. Let me
When I think about that, because my work does, I write the poem that comes. Lisa Clifton talked about that. How did you do that with 6 kids? I wrote the poem that came. And so whenever I am writing, making visual art, just making, right? My first thing is, am I free? Am I free? Can I make what is coming? Not, is it profitable? Not, is it good? Not, is it going to upset somebody? Not, is it going to make someone happy? It's, can I do the thing that I'm being called to do, right? And so first, I want to be free. And then secondly, when sharing, so I think that's the other thing, because you can write, you can make it, and then you decide what you're going to bring into the audience, what you're going to take to the public, right? If you want to check your temperature about how free you are as free as your tongue is. If you have something to share that's on your heart to share, and you choose not to, it will start to eat you from the inside out, right? But with that also, as the misery loves company, so does joy, right? Trauma is in blood memory, that's scientifically proven. It changes DNA and is transferred forward. So is the joy, though. And that part is not talked about enough because they want you to focus on your pain and trauma as if that's the only part of our history, right? So my work is to honor, A, what comes, because that is a gift that is above me, and I'm grateful that it comes. And then 2, in sharing that work, right, showing that I am free to share and create that work will hopefully make that space and share that freedom by example with others.